Welcome to this video about Bible time prophecies that tell us when the Christ will return. Every couple years, someone foretells the imminent occurrence of the rapture, when many expect the Christ will return and take away his believers up into the sky. But then nothing happens. They miscalculated once again. That happened again in the USA in September of this year, 2025. Do you want to really know when the long-awaited Christ will return according to the Bible? Well, come along with me as we explore how the Bible is far from mute about when the Messiah of the latter days, the Christ returned, will appear. You may be thinking that the Bible does not give the day or the hour of the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days. That is true. The day and the hour are not revealed in the Bible. But the Bible does give the year in several different Bible time prophecies. It also gives some strong clues as to the locations that would be involved when he visits us. But we will be concentrating on the timing of his coming in this video. But I have some big news for you. Get ready. We in the USA have recently gone through, once again, loud predictions of the imminent occurrence of the rapture, wherein Jesus would supposedly come back and pluck his true believers off the face of the planet and take them to heaven. However, the rapture did not occur when predicted, as usual when we periodically get these predictions. But this rapture prediction failed, as all such predictions will fail in the future too, because the Christ has already returned. Back in the 1800s, by the way, precisely when many Christians of that time had foretold from their interpretation of Bible time prophecies. They missed his coming in the 1800s because of their purely literal interpretation of other prophecies that they believed meant he would literally come down from the sky on a cloud and land at their feet. They got the time prophecies right, but failed in their understanding of the spiritual or symbolic meanings of other prophecies of his arrival. The plan in this video is to, number one, provide an explanation of Bible prophecy math with some examples, and second, to explain specific prophecies of the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days, who is also the returned Christ Spirit. Here is the detailed plan, called a table of contents. The first part is a short review of a few simple Bible prophecy time terms and mathematics, all Bible-based and accepted by most Bible scholars and prophecy buffs from way back in time. The second part explains the prophecy of 2300 days found in the book of Daniel, chapter 8, verse 14, which is a main prophecy, but not the only time prophecy that tells us the year that the Messiah of the latter days, the returned Christ, would appear. Note the day and the hour are not given, but the year definitely was foretold. Then the third part of this video will introduce you to the returned Christ and his forerunner, the Elijah figure for the new advent of the Messiah, who both of them have already made their appearances in our world in the 1800s. Right on time, as you will see. The fourth part is the application of this Bible time prophecy math to the time prophecy foretelling the coming of Jesus the Christ, the first advent of the Messiah. By showing that this Bible time prophecy math actually did foretell exactly when Jesus would appear, it will be proven that this time prophecy math is true. Thus, the math can be applied to other Bible time prophecies, including those prophecies of the second coming of the Messiah. And in the fifth part, I'll provide explanations of additional time prophecy terms. These terms will help you understand some other Bible time prophecies for other prophecies not covered in this video. And last, but not shown on this table, I will provide a few sources to get more information. I'll give you a little hint or taste of part 3 here, so you'll know I am serious about my statement that the Messiah, the Anointed One, the Christ of the latter days, has already appeared. The Elijah figure or forerunner made his appearance, and he foretold the imminent appearance of the new Messiah for this new era in the spiritualization of humankind. He was martyred by a government at the instigation of the clergy incensed by his teachings, much as Jesus was. Then the Messiah made his proclamation of his identity. He taught his new revelation from God for 40 years, established God's word for this new era in his many writings. Then he passed away in the Holy Land. That's a preview of what will be elaborated upon in part 3 of this video. There is no obligation to believe anything that is presented in this video. Judge the content by Christ's own criteria, as Jesus said in Matthew chapter 7, verse 20, quote, "Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them," end quote. Also, Christ said in Mark 13, verses 35 through 37, quote, "Watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch." End quote. Jesus told you to watch for him, so watch this video. Onward as we venture proving it. We start part 1, wherein the terms and math of time prophecies in the Bible will be explained, such as many of the terms and numbers you see on the right: 2300 days, a time, a week, 3.5 days, 1260 days, 70 weeks, 42 months, and many, many more. As mentioned before, though, only a few will be explained initially here in part 1. Then the remainder of these time prophecy terms will be explained in part 5 of the video. These are commonly accepted Bible prophecy terms regarding time prophecies in the Bible. These terms are accepted by most Jewish and Christian Bible prophecy experts. These explanations that I will share with you are not my invention, but rather come from Bible verses and from the fact that Jesus Christ's appearance on earth fulfilled one Bible time prophecy precisely according to this math. The math thus is proven. I will show you that in part 4. The very first and fundamental term in math to learn is that a day in prophecy equals a year to us humans on earth. To reiterate, a day in Bible verses that are time prophecies means that the prophecy is actually meaning a year on earth. Hebrew and Christian scholars agree on this, as mentioned before. The Bible references that explain this a day for a year are listed here on the screen. Numbers chapter 14, verse 34, Genesis 29, verses 27 and 28, and Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6. There are other time prophecy terms that are derived from that basic truth of a day in prophecy meaning an earth year. We'll review many of them now just to inform you how all this time prophecy math works. So a week of days in Bible prophecy means 7 days, of course, which equals 7 earth years. Note that a week is also referred to as a 7 in some Bible prophecies. Again, a week or a 7 equals 7 prophetic days, which means 7 years to us humans on this earth. Next, a month in Bible prophecy equals 30 prophetic days, which therefore equals 30 years. 30 prophetic days then in turn mean 30 Earth years to us living on this planet. In this video, days will be abbreviated as a small case d, and year or years will be small case y or yr. If you want to know why a prophetic month is 30 days in length rather than various lengths of time in other calendars, see part 5 of this video for more details. So then, what does a prophetic year mean? One prophetic year equals 12 months times 30 prophetic days in a prophetic month, which equals 360 prophetic days. A prophetic year is 360 days, which thus actually means 360 years on planet Earth. We've covered the topics of part or step 1 of this video. That is, you now should understand a few simple, essential Bible time prophecy terms and math. And we proceed to part 2. Here in part 2, I will tell you when, that's the year, some Bible prophecies say that the Messiah of the latter days, who is the same divine entity as the expected returned Christ, would appear. This artwork is an artist's imagining of the coming of the Messiah of the latter days, riding on a white horse, described in the book of Revelation, chapter 19. Now on to proving when the Anointed One, the Messiah, would return. Jesus himself told us where to find a prophecy that would tell his followers when he would return, and that is given in Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. Now the backdrop is that the disciples of Jesus asked him when he would return, and this is what Jesus said in response to that. Quote, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand." End quote. Jesus was telling his followers who were inquiring when to expect his return that they should go back to the book of Daniel to understand when he would return. So then, where in Daniel can we find this prophecy that Jesus is speaking of that would tell the disciples when he, the Messiah, would return? The first advent of the Messiah was foretold in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. This will be reviewed in part 4. It's only logical then that the second advent of the Messiah would also be mentioned somewhere in Daniel. Also realize that this fact that there are 2 different years given for the appearance of the Messiah was a cause of great confusion to the Jews at the time of Jesus, and since, because the meaning of these verses in Daniel were not understood. It also helped that the clergy of Judaism has refused to accept the meaning of Daniel chapter 9 in terms of those verses foretelling the coming of 2 different appearances of the Messiah. Of course, both Jews and Christians are having difficulties understanding Daniel's 2 time prophecies of the 2 appearances of 2 different Messiahs, which has, so far, worked against their accepting the new Messiah, who has already made his appearance in the world in the 1800s. But I digress. Onward with finding the verses in Daniel that foresee when the second Messiah, the Messiah of the latter days, would appear. This prophecy of the second coming of the Messiah is found in Daniel chapter 8, verses 13, 14, and 17. Here is the text of these 3 verses from Daniel chapter 8. Quote, "Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to him, How long will it take for the vision to be filled? The vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, the surrender of the sanctuary and the trampling underfoot of the Lord's people." He said to me, It will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated. Then on to verse 17 for the clincher. Quote, "As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified and fell prostrate. 'Son of man,' he said to me, 'understand that the vision concerns the time of the end.'" End quotes. According to that 17th verse, these 2,300 days would end at the time of the end. The time of the end is also known as the latter days in some Bible versions, synonymous most of the time with the last days and in that day. Now there are a lot of that days in the Bible. You have to look at the context of where it's found to discover if it's a prophecy, number one, and that it is about the end times, latter days, number two, meaning the appearance of the Messiah. And of course, end of the world, except Bible scholars pretty much agree that the early translations of the Greek texts of the book of Matthew incorrectly translated the Greek word eonos as world when it should have been translated as age. So the correct term would be end of the age. The time of the end is the end of the age. We go back to the 2,300-day prophecy from this passage from Daniel that will reveal the year that Messiah would appear in the latter days, the time of the end of the age. Let's zero in on verse 14. Quote, "He said to me, it will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated." End quote. Just to emphasize that this is a prophecy of 2,300 days. We already know what that means. 2,300 actual Earth years. Again, the meaning of the terms reconsecrating or cleansing of the sanctuary means the coming of the Anointed One, the Messiah, and the reestablishment of the sanctuary, meaning that a new covenant from and with God will be established, thus making a clean slate for humanity by the coming of a new revelation from God. This is a timeline showing the beginning of the 2,300 years of this prophecy at the green vertical line on the left. Then the end point is on the right at the vertical pink line. But we have a little problem here. How do we find out when this 2,300 year period begins so that we can then calculate what year it ends? So we could know when the Messiah would appear. The starting point for counting these 2,300 days or years to the second advent is the same year as the starting point for the coming of the first advent that we will discover in part 4, where we will review the 70 weeks prophecy that foretold the first appearance of the Messiah, Jesus Christ. Now that starting point is the year 457 BCE. If you want an explanation, again, it will be in part 4 of this video. Here on our timeline, I have plugged in the beginning date of 457 BCE on the left. And as we now know, the ending date, the year the Messiah, the returned Christ, would appear on the right in 1844 Common Era. The Gregorian calendar is now used throughout the world and is now considered a common calendar. The before Christ years are called BCE for before Common Era, and the AD years are now referred to as CE for Common Era. In this presentation you may see BC and BCE used interchangeably, and AD and CE used interchangeably. To find out what year on the AD or CE Common Era side of the calendar that the Messiah will return, first we start with the 2300 days from the prophecy. Then we subtract the number of BCE years. That's the 457. That's from 457 BCE, date of the decree to rebuild Jerusalem. We get 1843, which would be the year that the Messiah would return, except that we first must correct for the fact that there is no year zero in the change from BCE to CE in the Gregorian calendar. Thus, to make that correction, we must add 1 year, resulting in the correct year of the Messiah's return is actually to be the year 1844 Common Era. Here is a depiction of a timeline to illustrate those 2300 years between the year 457 BC to the year 1844 AD or CE on the right. Another way to check on the math, another method, is to use the Jewish calendar. It is actually much simpler because we do not have to deal with the change from BCE to CE like we do when applying it to the Gregorian calendar. Note that the years in the Jewish or Hebrew calendar are titled AM, which is the acronym for the Latin term Anno Mundi, which means in the year of the world. Here you see a timeline showing the years 3000 AM on the far left to the year 7000 on the right. Note that the vertical yellow line between the years 5750 and 6000 AM is showing where the approximate current date is given here as October 1st of the Gregorian year 2025, which is 9 Tishri of the year 5786 on the Jewish calendar. Here I've added on the far left a vertical pink line to depict the date of the first day of the Jewish month of Nisan in the year 3304 AM. That is the date of the year that the decree to rebuild Jerusalem was issued, also noted here as the year 457 BC. Now advancing 2300 years from that year of 3304 AM, you get to the first day of the month of Nisan in the year 5604 AM. And that is equivalent to the date of 21st of March in 1844. So the prophecy was fulfilled it was to be fulfilled 2300 years after 3304, which was 5604 in the Jewish calendar. Here is the math. The Jewish year 3304 Anno Mundi, which is the year 457 BC when the decree to rebuild Jerusalem was given by Artaxerxes on the first day of the Jewish month of Nisan. We add the 2300 years, remembering the prophecy of Daniel chapter 8, the 2300 day prophecy. The sanctuary would be cleansed by the appearance of God's Messiah of the latter days, and you arrive at the year 5604, which is Gregorian year 1844 AD or CE. Near the top of this slide, just above the timeline, you can see the number of years from Jewish year 3304 to year 5604 is 2300 years. Thus, the 2300 day prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 was to be fulfilled in the year 1844 Common Era. The appearance of the Messiah of the latter days dispensation began exactly as foretold in Daniel, specifically on May 23, 1844 Common Era. Soon I will tell you the story of the Elijah figure of God's plan for the latter days, then the story of the new Messiah himself. If you want to check up on these dates in the Jewish and Gregorian calendars, visit this website, www.rosettacalendar.com. You can plug in any date in the Gregorian calendar, such as 457 BC, click on the Convert button, and then read below in the Hebrew calendar at the bottom and see what 457 BC date is in the Jewish calendar. In this screenshot, you can see that the 21st of March 1844 AD, circled in red at the top, is the same as the first day of the Jewish month of Nisan in the year 5604 in the Jewish calendar, at the bottom, circled in red at the bottom. It all seems so simple. The math is spectacularly easily understood. You may be wondering, what took so long for people to find it? Why are we just hearing about it? When was this discovered? Why has it apparently been hidden from us all this time? You might ask. So why did it take so long for us to discover the meanings here? Well, let's look at verse 26 of chapter 8 of Daniel. Quote, "The vision of the evenings and mornings," that's the 2300-day prophecy, "that has been given you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future." End quote. The distant future is that it'll be 2300 years in the future. And that verse makes it obvious that by God's design, we were not meant to understand the 2300-day prophecy fully until around the time of its fulfillment. The latter days, also known as the end times or the last days, began around 1840 Common Era also. What's the evidence for that? Well, the Zohar, that's an ancient book of mystical commentary on the Jewish Torah, tells us the year after which the Messiah would appear. That year in their text was after the year 1840 AD. You should see the section of the book of the Zohar called Vayera, chapter 32, titled "The Reckoning of the Messianic Era," in articles 445 and 450. These verses state that the Messiah would appear 400 years before the beginning of the 7th millennium in the Jewish calendar, which is the year 7001 or 2240 AD in the Gregorian calendar. That's the year of the beginning of the 7th millennium. Now, 400 years before that then would be the year 1840 AD in the Gregorian calendar. It seems obvious that that year, 1840 AD, would therefore be near the beginning of the latter days. The second strong evidence is the end point of the 2300-day prophecy, meaning, as we just calculated, around the year 1844 Common Era, which obviously occurs soon after the year 1840 spoken of before. And also just the events all around the world. There is so much injustice, violence, and disunity that's tearing our civilization apart, with increasing cries of ordinary people for a solution, that it screams a scenario of the last days and the end of an age. People want more and more that a new age of justice and love is sought. To get the details of the Zohar's teaching on the end times, meaning when the Messiah would come, also known as the latter days, see my video titled "The Prophecy of the 7th Millennium." This video is on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel name is there. It's at Integral Destiny 9. All one word, no spaces between the characters. At, the symbol at, Integral Destiny 9. So now, after that little detour, we're going back to answering that question about when the meaning of the 2300-day prophecy actually became known. It was after many centuries of people not being able to exactly understand what the 2300-day prophecy meant. So when then was the true meaning of this time prophecy discovered? Is this a new interpretation of these verses? Well, the answer is it's not at all new, and I'm not one of the pioneering parties who discovered the meaning of this prophecy either. In the early to mid 1800s, there were dozens of prominent Bible scholars, clergy, and informed lay people who had discovered the meaning of the 2300-day prediction, and that it would be over in the 1843 to 1844 period. Of course, they originally thought it was 1843 because they forgot to rectify for there not being any year zero in the calendar. And we know that that led to the actual date being 1844. These hundreds of Bible and prophecy scholars spread the word about the imminent return of Christ in the early to mid 1800s throughout the Christian world, especially in the United States and Europe. A movement developed, spearheaded by many of these people, which has been referred to as the Advent movement or the Second Great Awakening. The First Great Awakening is now considered by many to have been in the 1730s and 40s in the Protestant churches. The Second Great Awakening included this Adventist movement. Leroy Froom, a Christian scholar who wrote about the Adventist movement of the 1800s, stated, quote, "Beginning about 1810, just after the French Revolution, a simultaneous study of the 2300 years and the impending judgment hour broke out in the various countries of Christendom. On both sides of the Atlantic and in different lands, men were led independently to similar conclusions. Not one or two voices, but a swelling chorus of men proclaimed the approaching terminus of the 2300 years as the message of prophecy for the hour." End quote. That's quoted from his book, The Prophetic Faith of Our Fathers, from 1950. This quote gives a taste of the fervor of the prophecy fulfillment expectations, the return of Christ, of the Great Awakening at the time of the mid-1800s. Who were these people who made predictions of the imminent appearance of the returned Christ? Here's a list of some of them on the next few slides, actually. I won't read them to you, just want you to understand how many people studied this 2300-day prophecy in Daniel and figured out that the end point would be in the mid-1800s. And here's yet more of them. And more. And more. Note the arrow pointing to William Miller at the bottom. Yellow arrows are pointing to his name. This person's story in particular will be reviewed in the next few slides. This information was compiled by Dr. Hugh Mottla in his book, I Shall Come Again. Information about his book will be in the last part of this video, by the way. One of these Adventist leaders was William Miller, as pointed out in the previous slide, a farmer from Upper New York and Vermont. His study of the Bible, after much prayer and devotion, led to his discovery of the meaning of this 2300-year prediction in Daniel. His preaching about the imminent return started the Millerite movement. He traveled the country teaching of the coming Second Advent. His large body of followers came to be called the Millerites. He first predicted the return was to occur in 1843, then realized his math error, that there is no year zero in the Gregorian calendar. Then he predicted March 21st, 1844 would be the day of the return, probably because that was the first day of the Jewish month of Nisan, which would have made it 2300 years exactly since Daniel made that prediction. When nothing happened on that day, he changed it to October 22nd, 1844, by the way. On the expected date and time, thousands assembled throughout the United States, Europe, and many other places throughout the world to await Christ's return down from the sky. But Christ did not show up as expected. Christ not coming down from the sky with literal trumpets blaring for the whole world to see was a huge letdown and became known as the Great Disappointment. Just a thought. Why do you suppose he didn't show up? Was the Bible wrong, do you think? Something has bothered me since I first read about the Millerites and their huge disappointment. They're standing on the mountains and hills awaiting his coming down out of the sky, only to be so excruciatingly disappointed. But then, why did no one go out in search for someone in the world, having declared that he was the promised one? Especially since Jesus the Christ said he'd come back as a thief in the night. A thief sneaks into your home, takes your stuff, and flees without even saying hello. Christ said in Revelation chapter 3, verse 3, quote, "Remember therefore what you have received and heard, hold it fast and repent. But if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what time I will come to you." End quote. And in chapter 16, verse 15 of the book of Revelation, he repeats this, quote, "Look, I come like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and remains clothed, so as not to go naked and be shamefully exposed." End quote. So the Millerites and all the other Christians who fervently believed in the time prophecies of the Bible for the coming of the Messiah failed to follow the specific warning of Christ himself about his return. Next is part 3. We now know the math of the 2300-day prophecy, and that it told us he would appear in or around the year 1844 Common Era. Now in part 3, I will divulge his identity as well as his forerunner, who appeared to announce his imminent appearance on earth. Now, the Bible time prophecy calculations brought by the Advent movement and the Millerites to the year 1844. But 1844 came and went, but Jesus did not come down out of the sky as they expected, or otherwise appear in the Christian world. Why didn't the returned Christ come to those who were looking for him? After all, the Bible verses seem so clear and compelling. Could it be that the Christians of the 1800s made the same mistakes as the Jews at the advent of Jesus Christ? Had these devout Christians so convinced themselves that the prophecies of the second coming were to be taken literally, regarding not only the time of his coming, but also of the method of his coming, meaning literally coming down from the sky, that they missed the inner spiritual meanings of the prophecies? In other words, could it be that they were correct about the time of his return, but incorrect about how and where he would appear? Remember, many of these people were standing on hills and mountains waiting for Christ to come down out of the sky and land at their feet. Whether they were in Canada or the United States or Europe, they all expected Jesus to come out of the sky and appear before their very eyes. That, of course, is when the great disappointment occurred. But what if he, the Messiah, actually did return? Exactly when it was predicted. So let's suppose he really did come. What other biblical prophecies and verses and historical events in or near 1844 would indicate the how, the where, and the who of the coming of the thief in the night? And thief in the night is in Revelation chapter 3, verse 3, and Revelation chapter 16, verse 15. as stating that would be the way that the Messiah would return, as a thief in the night. First, let's investigate where the Bible says he will come from. Where will the events of the appearances of the Elijah figure and the Messiah begin? The Bible says it will begin in Elam. Why in Elam? Well, Daniel had his visions of the 2300-day prophecy when he was in Elam, a part of ancient Persia. He said that Elam would be a place of vision in the latter days. That's in Daniel chapter 8, verse 2. Now, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, verse 38, it speaks of Elam and the things that shall, quote, shall come to pass in the latter days. That means that Elam will be of great consequence in the latter days. In Jeremiah, that same chapter 49, just the verse before that, it states in verse 37, quote, "And I will set my throne in Elam, saith the Lord," end quote. Elam is in the southwestern part of Persia, which is present-day Iran. Here are two maps of the Middle East. The map on the left is of the Middle East in ancient times, when Assyria, Babylonia, and Elam existed at various times. Note where Elam is located. The big red arrow is pointing to it. Also note on the left that the black borders are modern ones, not at all pertinent to ancient times in the Middle East, so just ignore them on the map on the left. Now, the map on the right is of modern-day Middle East with the national boundaries shown. Note the location of ancient Elam. It's pointed to with the green arrow this time in the same basic location, of course. Ancient Elam is located in southwestern Iran, which was formerly known as Persia until 1935. And yes, Elam did indeed play a major part in the beginnings of the appearance of the Messiah of the latter days, very much in keeping with this prophecy of Elam being where God will set his throne in the latter days. We now know from the Bible when the Messiah would appear in the sanctuary cleansed thereby, and that is 1844 Common Era. And the where was to be in Elam, Persia. That's modern-day southwest Iran. But that leaves the who. What does the Bible say about who would come? The Bible says in several locations that there will be two manifestations of God who will appear, such as in two locations in the book of Malachi as follows. In chapter 3, verse 1, quote, "I will, number 1, send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. Then suddenly, number 2, the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come, says the Lord Almighty," end quote. Note, of course, I've added the 1 and the 2 in the text to highlight the differentiation in the text of the application of the message there to the first entity to come and then the second entity to come. Then in chapter 4, verse 5 of Malachi, quote, "See, I will, number 1, send the prophet Elijah to you before that, number 2, great and dreadful day of the Lord comes," end quote. Note that that great and dreadful day of the Lord specifically means when the Messiah comes. And in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 14, quote, "So he said, these are the two who are anointed to serve the Lord of all the earth," end quote. Notice that it says the two who are anointed to serve. Also notice at the bottom, the note there, it's very important to understand that, and some people don't realize this anymore, the term anointed one is in Hebrew the term Mashiach, which is the term Messiah in English. Anointed one in Greek is Christos, which in English is the word Christ. So Christ means anointed one, Messiah means anointed one, all the same thing. In the New Testament, in the book of Revelation, it also says there will be two great beings coming. First, the Lamb, and second, the one who sits on the throne, in that order. Also in the book of Luke, chapter 9, verse 26, quote, "For whoever is ashamed of me and my words, of him the Son of Man will be ashamed when he comes, number one, first, in his own glory, and number two, second, in his Father's glory, and of the holy angels," end quote. This verse is saying that two will be coming, two divine entities will be coming at the time of the latter days, the coming of the Son of Man. And note that other great faiths on earth also await the coming of two messengers of God. In Judaism, they expect two anointed ones to come, known as either Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David, or Elijah and the Messiah. And in Zoroastrianism, they are expecting Ushidar Ma and the Shah Baram. Note that the term Ushidar Ma means morning star, the herald for the coming of Shah Baram. In Shia Islam, they expect the Qaim and the Imam Hussein. And Sunni Islam expects the Mahdi or Mehdi and the return of Christ. So what does the Bible say about what his name will be when he returns? The Bible repeatedly calls this Spirit of God the glory of God, or the glory of the Lord. From the Old Testament to the final book of the New Testament, the book of Revelation, which also refers to him as he who sits on the throne. The glory of God, that's in English. In Arabic and Persian, it is Bahá'u'lláh. The word Baha means glory. The connector U means of. And the final syllable, the LLAH, is for Allah, the Arabic word for God. The glory of God, Bahá'u'lláh. By the way, if you have been taught that Muslims worship another God, not the Christian God, with their God called by the name of Allah, this is incorrect. Allah is simply the Arabic name for the same God of Judaism and Christianity. Arabs who are Christians also refer to God as Allah. Think of it this way. French people worship Dieu. Italians worship Dio. Spaniards worship Dios. Germans worship Gott. Greeks worship Theos. Poles worship Bog. Portuguese worship Deus. Does that mean all these peoples worship different gods? Obviously no. Of course, you may be thinking that these are countries that are mostly Christian anyway. Now this last word, Elaha or Allaha, you think maybe it's an Arabic nation, you think? Actually, this is probably what Jesus Christ called God. This is from the Aramaic language, which many scholars believe Jesus would likely have spoken. So Jesus called God Allaha. So what is so scary about the word Allah for God? So let's go back to 1844 Common Era, when the prophecy said Christ would appear. Large numbers of Christians at the time were super disappointed that Jesus did not come down from the sky to save them. That great disappointment mentioned before. But what else was going on in the world at that time? Here is a map of the Earth. The area bordered in green is the approximately commonly referred to as the Middle East. Now I'll show you where Persia is located, the Persia of the 1800s Common Era. That's in the red box. Now this is an enlargement of that area. Persia is the medium gray shaded area. Remember when we discovered that the Bible said that Elam will be where God sets his throne? This area, shaded in light green, is ancient Elam, of which they spoke in the Bible. It's now the southwestern part of Persia, which is now referred to as Iran, by the way. We are now going to see how this came true in the city of Shiraz, Persia. And that is in the red circle. And that is where God set his throne, in Shiraz, Persia. Now, just FYI, Persia officially changed its name to Iran in the year 1935. The arrival of the Elijah figure, the forerunner and announcer of the appearance of the Messiah, opens up the drama that spellbinds his followers to this day. He, the open gate, invites all inside to meet the Messiah. This story will mesmerize millions of others in the future as this tale begins to be revealed to the world. Actually, after his martyrdom, a play about that event was written and performed because the event so amazed many in Europe. We've established that the year 1844 was to be the year of the return. If we look at some events in the Middle East, there were some remarkable things that went on that fulfilled Bible prophecies. On May 23, 1844, a young man entitled the Bab, which means the gate in English, who declared the dawning of a new day in religious history of the world. The young man came from southern Persia, a district called in the Bible the land of Elam. Now remember, Elam is where Daniel was located when he had his visions of the future. Those visions pinpointed Elam as the location God would set his throne. That's from Jeremiah chapter 49, verses 37 and 38. The Bab made his declaration that he was the promised one, and also the herald of another manifestation of God he called him whom God shall make manifest, who would arise soon. And again, that was in May of 1844. The Bab's ministry lasted for 6 years and attracted many, many thousands of followers. Followers of the Bab were called Babis. His followers came from all backgrounds: Muslims, Sufis, Zoroastrians, Persian Jews, among others. The Bab had 19 letters of the living, who were the disciples of the Bab, including one woman, a famed poet named Tahira, who was also called Qurratul Ain, which means solace of the eyes, and also Zareen Taj, which means crown of gold. Listen to this public declaration made by the Bab, proclaiming to all exactly who he was. Quote, I am, the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked, at whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten. Verily I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of both the East and the West to obey my word and to pledge allegiance to my person. End quote. The Muslim clergy in Persia were incensed by the Bab making this claim that he was the promised Mahdi, the promised one according to Muslim writings and tradition. Because the Bab attracted so many devoted followers, the Islamic clergy and governmental rulers felt threatened by him and his teachings. The Bab was the forerunner, the Elijah figure of the Messiah's coming in the latter days. But the Bab was not just a forerunner or herald to the Messiah. He was a manifestation of God and brought his own book, the Bayan, which means the explanation, exposition, or utterance. But the Bab was foremost the herald of the promised one to come, who he called him whom God shall make manifest. The Bab was put to death by firing squad on July 9, 1850, at the order of the Persian government leaders, with instigation by the Muslim clergy. After the Bab's death, more than 20,000 of his followers were also put to death, some in extremely gruesome ways, just because of their beliefs as followers of the Bab. This is a photo of the shrine of the Bab. It's located in Haifa, Israel, on the side of Mount Carmel. In the early 1900s, his followers brought his body, that had been hidden all those years in Persia, and buried it in this shrine on the side of Mount Carmel. In the 1950s, the superstructure and the golden dome were added on top of it. Who would have believed during the Bab's short lifetime, he was only about 31 years old when he was martyred, that people from all over the world would someday come to pay homage to him at his shrine in Haifa. This is a closer, more recent view of the shrine of the Bab. The Messiah, the returned Christ, revealed his presence in the world in 1863. Again, his name is Bahá'u'lláh, the Messiah of the latter days. He was born in 1817 and passed away in the Holy Land in 1892. And again, the name Bahá'u'lláh means the glory of God. Note that the sacred writings written by Bahá'u'lláh were in his native language of Persian, Farsi, and in Arabic. Baha'u'llah's given name was Hussein Ali. The Bab gave him the name Baha, which means glory, when Hussein Ali became a chief disciple of the Bab, even though Baha'u'lláh and the Bab never physically met. They did correspond, but they never physically met. Baha'u'lláh means the glory of God in English. If you recall, I reviewed numerous Bible verses in both the Old and New Testament, which said that the glory of God is to appear in the latter days. Those prophecies were true and have been fulfilled exactly. You may recall that the followers of the Bab were called Babis, but from the time Baha'u'lláh made his declaration of his divine identity and mission as God's manifestation for this new era, those who recognized Baha'u'lláh as the Bab's prophesied him whom God shall make manifest became known as Baha'is and were no longer called Babis. To explain a bit further, the word Baha means glory in English. Baha'i means follower of the glory, meaning followers of Baha'u'lláh. The new faith based upon the guidance of Baha'u'lláh is called the Baha'i faith. After the martyrdom of the Bab in July 1850, Baha'u'lláh, as one of the Bab's chief disciples, was imprisoned for several months in the Black Pit prison in Tehran. While he was in that prison, Baha'u'lláh had a vision wherein he was told of his station as the one promised by the Bab, that the Bab called him whom God shall make manifest. This was in late 1852 that he received his divine assignment, so to speak. He did not reveal this vision to anyone for about 10 years. In 1853, after his release from prison, he was exiled to Baghdad as a prisoner of the Ottoman Empire. So he was kicked out of Persia by the king of Persia and taken to the Ottoman Empire in Baghdad. About 9 years later, in 1863, just before he was once again exiled a second time to Istanbul, Baha'u'lláh announced to the Babis, the followers of the Bab, that he, Baha'u'lláh, was the promised one that the Bab foretold. This map is of the Middle East in the 1853 to 1892 time frame. The green area on the right is Persia, now Iran. The brown areas are part of the Ottoman Empire during that time. Way on the right is Tehran, the capital of Persia, where Baha'u'lláh came from. He was exiled from Tehran in Persia by order of the Persian king in 1853 to the area of Baghdad to the west of Tehran. This exile was intended to put an end to the Babi community and the religion. Baha'u'lláh spent about 10 years in the area of Baghdad. With about 2 of those years he spent in solitude in the mountains of Kurdistan on a mountain called Sargalu. He did return to Baghdad. The local people in the area grew to have great regard for Baha'u'lláh and the Babis. This disturbed many who complained to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. It was decided to remove Baha'u'lláh, his family, and a few devoted Babis from Baghdad to Istanbul. He was transported by armed guard to Samsun on the coast of the Black Sea and boarded onto a steamship and taken to Istanbul by that steamer. After a few months in Istanbul, where the court of the Sultan found that Baha'u'lláh was not impressed by them or the politics of the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan had Baha'u'lláh taken away in exile again, this time to Adrianople, now called Edirne, which is above Constantinople on the map. After a couple years, Baha'u'lláh once again gained friends at all levels in that area and beyond, and the Sultan didn't like that, so he decided to banish Baha'u'lláh and several of his close companions very far away from any persons of influence who might decide to befriend him, all the way to the prison city of Akka in Palestine. Baha'u'lláh was put aboard a ship which sailed first to Alexandria, Egypt, then ultimately on to Haifa, Palestine, which is now Israel, where he disembarked. He was boarded onto a sailboat which then sailed across Haifa Bay to Akka, the prison city of Akka, where he entered it through the sea gate. The only other entrance into the walled prison city was a land gate having a huge door. The legacy of the life and teachings of Baha'u'lláh include the following: his writings, many books, tablets, and prayers, which include his counsels to humanity on how to make spiritual progress and continue an ever-advancing civilization through those counsels and the laws of God that he brought for the new era. He also brought God's plan for world peace. He has told us the framework of how to establish it, but we have to do the work. And until we do that work and pay attention to it, it won't get done. He brought a new covenant with God for the new era. Baha'u'lláh provided his son Abdu'l-Baha, designated as the center of the covenant and the exemplar for his followers, to continue this guidance for his followers. The guardian of the faith, Shoghi Effendi, carried through the instructions of Baha'u'lláh and Abdu'l-Baha in the establishment of their faith, especially the foundations for the administrative order of the faith. And the design of and foundation for the administrative order of the Baha'i faith, with the Universal House of Justice as the supreme body. I've listed here many of the books and tablets written by Baha'u'lláh himself. Hidden Words. Now there are 2 sections to that, the Persian Hidden Words and the Arabic Hidden Words, translated into English, of course, if that's your language. Tablets to the Kings and Rulers. Baha'u'lláh sent these tablets, some to specific rulers and kings or queens and to a pope. and others to kings and rulers in general. Another one is the Book of Certitude, also known as the Kitab-i-Iqan, the Book of Laws, known as the Kitab-i-Aqdas, and the Epistle to the Son of Wolf. Gems of Divine Mysteries, the Summons of the Lord of Hosts, the Tabernacle of Unity, Prayers and Meditations by Baha'u'lláh, Tablets of Baha'u'lláh, and hundreds of other tablets and prayers. Following are some excerpts from the writings of Baha'u'lláh, the ocean of the Word of God brought by him for humanity for this new era. This is an excerpt from a tablet by Baha'u'lláh. Quote, "The time foreordained unto the peoples and kindreds of the earth is now come. The promises of God, as recorded in the Holy Scriptures, have all been fulfilled. Out of Zion hath gone forth the law of God, and Jerusalem and the hills and land thereof are filled with the glory of his revelation. Happy is the man that pondereth in his heart that which hath been revealed in the books of God, the help in peril, the self-subsisting. Meditate upon this, O ye beloved of God, and let your ears be attentive unto his word, so that ye may, by his grace and mercy, drink your fill from the crystal waters of constancy, and become as steadfast and immovable as the mountain in his cause." End quote. And that was an excerpt from a compilation of many of the writings of Baha'u'lláh in a book called Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'lláh. Another quote from Baha'u'llah's writings, quote, "Incline your hearts, O people of God, unto the counsels of your true, your incomparable friend. The word of God may be likened unto a sapling whose roots have been implanted in the hearts of men. It is incumbent upon you to foster its growth through the living waters of wisdom, of sanctified and holy words, so that its root may become fully fixed and its branches may spread out as high as the heavens and beyond." End quote from Baha'u'lláh, from his Book of Tablets of Baha'u'lláh revealed after the Kitab-i-Aqdas. Kitab-i-Aqdas means the Book of Laws. The next two quotes are from Baha'u'llah's book titled Hidden Words. "O son of dust, verily I say unto thee, of all men the most negligent is he that disputeth idly, and seeketh to advance himself over his brother. Say, O brethren, let deeds, not words, be your adorning." End quote. "O son of earth, wouldst thou have me? Seek none other than me. And wouldst thou gaze upon my beauty? Close thine eyes to the world and all that is therein. For my will and the will of another than me, even as fire and water, cannot dwell together in one heart." End quote. Another one from the book Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'lláh. Quote, "There can be no doubt whatever that the peoples of the world, of whatever race or religion, derive their inspiration from one heavenly source, and are the subjects of one God. The difference between the ordinances under which they abide should be attributed to the varying requirements and exigencies of the age in which they were revealed." End quote. And another from Gleanings, quote, "My object is none other than the betterment of the world and the tranquility of its peoples. The well-being of mankind, its peace and security, are unattainable unless and until its unity is firmly established. This unity can never be achieved so long as the counsels which the pen of the Most High hath revealed are suffered to pass unheeded." End quote. And this quote from Baha'u'lláh from his book, The Tabernacle of Unity, quote, "O servants, eyes are needed if one is to see, and ears if one is to hear. Whoso in this blessed day hath not heard the divine call hath indeed no ear. By this is not meant that bodily ear that is perceived by the eye. Open your inner eye, that ye may behold the celestial fire, and listen with the ear of inner understanding, that ye may hear the delightsome words of the Beloved." End quote. And remember Baha'u'llah's counsel to all humanity: the earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens. Most of Baha'u'llah's writings have been translated into approximately 800 languages for the followers of Baha'u'llah's worldwide religion, the Baha'i Faith. The international website for the Baha'i Faith is at the bottom of this slide: www.bahai.org. Many of Baha'u'llah's writings are accessible online for free at this website: www.bahai.org/library. You have at this point learned about the return to Christ's Spirit, Baha'u'lláh, and his forerunner, the Bab. If you care about the nitty-gritty details of the math of Bible time prophecies, the next part, Part 4, will demonstrate how the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, precisely foretold the appearance of Jesus Christ. This makes it official. We are at Part 4 now. Now we get to Part 4 of this video, and that is the section wherein I will show you how Bible time prophecy math is applied to the time prophecy in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verses 24 to 27, wherein this time prophecy told us exactly when the Messiah would first appear in the first advent, Jesus the Christ. Why bother with proving the first advent of the Messiah, Jesus Christ? Well, if we understand about when the first advent occurred according to Bible time prophecies, it will help us determine when the second advent was to occur. Also, if you want to know how the starting point of the 2300-day prophecy came from the 457 BCE date, that is explained in this Part 4. The key prophecy in the Old Testament that prophesied the first coming of the Messiah is in the book of Daniel, as mentioned before, chapter 9, verses 24 through 27. Those verses are shown here. Note that there are 4 time prophecy segments within this prophecy of the coming of the first Messiah. These segments are labeled as segments A, B, C, and D, as shown on this slide. I'll review the text, but since the print is so small, I'll enlarge it verse by verse so you can more easily follow along. Verse 24, quote, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. End quote. Note that in that verse 24, the prophecy of 70 weeks is given for the time period until your people, meaning the Jews, Daniel's people, will finish the transgression, make an end of sins, etc., and that last line, to anoint the most holy, meaning anoint the Messiah. The Hebrew word Mashiach, the term Messiah to us English speakers, means the anointed one, as does the Greek word Christos, from which the term Christ derives. I am labeling this 70 weeks prophecy within the whole prophecy as prophecy segment A. Verse 25, quote, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. In verse 25, the next two prophecy segments are the 7 weeks labeled as segment B and the 62 weeks prophecy segment labeled C. Verses 26 and 27 quote, "And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood, and till the end of the war desolations are determined. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering." End quote, and end of this prophecy of the coming of the Messiah's first advent. Here I have emphasized prophecy segment D, that of 1 week's duration, for the period the Messiah will confirm a covenant with many. And here is an overview of those verses again, just to see them again how they fit together, A through D. The A through D time frames are listed here. The time frame labeled A is 70 weeks, which is 70 weeks times 7 days in a week, which is equal to 490 days. B is 7 weeks, meaning 7 weeks times 7 days in a week equals 49 days. Period C is 62 weeks, which is 62 times 7 days in a week equals 434 days. And 1 week is 1 times 7 days in a week, and it equals 7 days. But remember from our discussion in part 1 of this video that in prophecy, 1 day in prophecy equals 1 actual year. Therefore, converting these time periods in days to years, we end up with these periods of time. A equals 490 years. That's the total period of time for the prophecy. Therefore, the so-called 70 weeks prophecy is actually the 490 years prophecy. The period of time we label B is 49 years, C is 434 years, and D is 7 years long. To explain all this more clearly, let's do some timeline graphs. What fun! And it will really help gel these time prophecy periods in your minds. Now I'm going to put these time frames, A, B, C, and D, onto this timeline. Let's first look at the design of the timeline. The lavender-colored vertical line on the left is the beginning of the 70-week or 490-year period of time. At this time, we are starting at year 0, because we have not yet discovered the beginning point for the 70-week or 490-year time period. We will later find out from Daniel when the starting point is. Next, I'll clarify a few things about the time periods on the orange timeline, circled here in red. Note that in this explanation I've added the middle row of prophetic days here, circled in red. For the first yellow vertical line on the left on the orange timeline, we have 3 numbers in the red box below it. This means that this first yellow time demarcation is at the 10 prophetic weeks point. That's the 10W in white at the top, which is equivalent to 70 prophetic days, D for days, below the 10W. Remember, there are 7 days in a week, so those 10 weeks equals 70 days. Then, since the Bible says a day equals a year in prophecy, those 70 prophetic days equals the 70 actual earth years, and that is the number in pink at the bottom of that red square. For the second yellow vertical line on the orange timeline, we have 3 numbers in the green box below it. This means that the second yellow time demarcation is at the 20 prophetic weeks point. That is the 20W in the white at the top, which is equivalent to 140 prophetic days. That is because there are 7 days in a week, so those 20 weeks equals 20 times 7 equals 140. Then, since the Bible says a day equals a year, those 140 prophetic days equals the 140 actual Earth years, and that is the number in pink at the bottom of the green box. So by the time we get to the end point on the far right of the timeline here, where the vertical lavender post is, we have the full 70 weeks. That's the 70W below it from the prophecy, which equals 490 days in yellow below it in the blue box, which in turn means 490 Earth years, the pink number at the bottom of the blue box. After this point in the presentation, the numbers for the days there circled in red will not be shown in the timelines after this slide. Now you see prophetic weeks and the actual years below it. And just for easy reading, the text for both prophetic weeks and actual Earth years below it will henceforth both be in white text. Here I have inserted a line with arrow points at each end to represent the A period of time from the Daniel prophecy. This lavender A and the horizontal arrow underneath it illustrates the 70-week or 490-year period, which spans from the vertical line on the left, our year 0 at this point, to the vertical line on the right. This 70-week period equals 490 actual Earth years. Now I've added segment B, that 7 prophecy week period, which is equal to 49 actual years. And remember, 7 weeks times 7 days in a week equals 49 days, which equals 49 years. This is the period of time of the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Starting at the year 0, going 49 years, you end up at the blue vertical dashed line. The green B and the arrow underneath it illustrates that 7-week, 49-year period that spans from the vertical line on the left to that dashed blue vertical line. Now this is a depiction of the 62-week period, that's segment C of the time from verse 25. 62 weeks times 7 days per week results in 434 days, which equals in turn 434 years. The yellow C and the arrow underneath it illustrates the 62-week or 434-year period, and it spans from the dashed blue line on the left, the vertical blue line, to the red dashed vertical line on the right. The B and C periods of time are sequential. They do not overlap. The B 7-week period starts at the 0 vertical line at the far left and goes to the blue vertical dashed line. Then the C period starts at that point, at the blue dashed line, and goes for 434 years to the red dashed line on the far right. B and C are added together because this segment of verse 25 states, "There shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." So the mathematical formula there is B and C equals Z, another product. So that's the same thing as B plus C equals Z. We're back at that timeline again. We see that segment B starts at the 0 mark, and you're adding the C 62 weeks to it. So in the white arrow at the bottom, which combines B and C, B plus C equals 69 weeks total of the 483 years of the total 490-year prophecy. That leaves that one last 1-week period. That last week predicted in verse 27 is shown here with the D with the arrow pointing to that little tiny blue line there between the red vertical dashed line and the lavender vertical line. And that is that one last week in verse 27, wherein it states, "Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week." And the he there is the Messiah. Put them all together and you can see how B, the 7 weeks, C, the 62 weeks, and D, the 1 week prophecies, fit together within that 70-week time prophecy period, which is A at the top. Put in a more easily added format, you can see that segment A of 490 years is equal to the other 3 segments being added together, as you see here. B plus C plus D equals 490 years. One more tidbit of information that adds to understanding this prophecy. The reasons that the B, C, and D numbers are segmented into 49-year, 434-year, and 7-year period is because there were 3 stages of preparing for and receiving the Messiah. First, it took 49 years, that's the B segment, to physically rebuild the temple, meaning rebuild Jerusalem. But it took another 434 years to get to the spiritual rebuilding, that was the coming of the Messiah. Then that last week, or 7-year period, was the ministry of the Messiah. Halfway through that, he was crucified, just like Daniel predicted. But what is the starting point for this prophecy? When did this 70-week period, 490 actual Earth year period, start? For the answer to that question, we must go back to Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. Quote, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until the Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." End quote. So the beginning point of the 70-week period is the year when the command or decree to rebuild Jerusalem was issued. There were 4 commands or decrees to rebuild Jerusalem that Bible scholars cite as possible dates. And they are: the first one was in 536 BC by Cyrus in the book of Ezra, chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. The second in 519 BC by Darius, that's in Ezra chapter 6, verses 1 through 12. The third, that was in 457 BC, that's Artaxerxes in Ezra chapter 7. And the fourth, in 444 BC by Artaxerxes, and that's in Nehemiah chapter 2. Most Jewish and Christian Bible scholars agree that the third decree, issued in 457 BCE, was the one that really resulted in the rebuilding of Jerusalem and the start of the religious observations in the temple. Now I've plugged in that 457 BC on the far left part of the graph here, where the 0 used to be. And the 70 weeks prophecy from Daniel chapter 9 is depicted at the top lavender arrow between the 2 vertical lavender lines. The D with the white arrow and also the pink arrow pointing to it, they point to the last week, the 7 years, wherein the Messiah, Jesus the Christ, had his divinely ordained ministry. As Daniel stated, quote, "But in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering." End quote. He put an end to sacrifice and offering when he was crucified on the cross. This interpretation of the time prophecies in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 through 27 is not a new concept. There were hundreds of Bible scholars and prophecy fans in the early and mid-1800s who came to understand the meaning of these verses of Daniel and other verses of Daniel that predict when the second coming would occur. Now I've removed some of the clutter from the chart here. so we can see more clearly the starting point of 457 BC and the end of the 70 weeks at the far right. And you can see the in the middle of that last week, the crucifixion of Jesus. There is no record of any other claimant to messiahship that meets these criteria and whose message survived the test of time. Others who did claim or were thought to be the Messiah, such as Bar Kokhba, did not last as legitimate messiahs in the annals of history. Thus, the Messiah's first advent, Jesus the Christ, has been proven exactly when the Bible time prophecies and the time prophecy math said it would happen. Hopefully you remember this timeline of the 2300 days prophecy of when the Messiah would appear the second time for Christians, his return, which is the first appearance for the Jews. Now I'll plug in the diagram of the 70 weeks prophecy of the appearance of the first Messiah, that of Jesus Christ, that we just determined. It is bordered in a bright pink so you can locate it on the slide on the left side of the timeline. Hopefully you've found it. Now I will remove the pink border. That way it's more apparent how it fits within that 2300 day prophecy, the first 70 weeks, meaning 490 years of that 2300 days prophecy. Remember, the two prophecies' time periods start at the same point, the year 457 BCE. These exercises in parts 2 and 4 prove the truth of the prophecies in Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 to 27, foretelling the arrival of the Messiah of the first advent. It also proves that Bible time prophecy mathematics are true. A day for a year is true. It also proves that Jesus was the Messiah of the first advent. Who else met the time frames and who also claimed to be the Messiah? And proves the starting date of both time prophecies being 457 BCE, the prophecies of the appearances of both the first Messiah, Jesus Christ, and the second Messiah, the returned Christ, who was Bahá'u'lláh. On to part 5, where more time prophecy terms and math are reviewed. These other terms are applicable to some other time prophecies in the Bible that are not covered in this video, but they may be useful to you in the future if you come across some other time prophecies. Hopefully this slide will impress upon you that you are now in part 5 at this point. We start part 5, continuing with explaining the terms and math of time prophecies in the Bible. At the beginning of this video, I introduced a bare minimum of this information so that I could quickly introduce the Bible's prophecy of when the Messiah of the latter days would appear. This section includes an explanation of why prophetic months are 30 days in length. Another term in Bible prophecy verses is a time. A time equals one prophetic year, which means 360 prophetic days, which means 360 earth years. Then there's the term times. That's times plural with an S at the end. Whereas a time means a year, times plural means 2 years. 2 years at 360 days per year times 2 would equal 720 days, which means 720 years on earth. Another term, half a time. Since a time equals 1 year, obviously half a time equals 6 months. 6 months of 30 days each equals 180 prophetic days, which in turn means 180 years on earth. So half a time in prophecy means 180 actual years. This term is a special one because it's combining some of the other terms, and that is time, times, and half a time. That prophetic phase can be found in 3 prophecies in the Bible, all about the same time prophecy period. Those 3 verses are Daniel chapter 7 verse 25, Daniel chapter 12 verse 7, and in the book of Revelation in its chapter 12 verse 14. The Bible prophecy term time, times, and half a time at the top there is a mathematical equation, and that is time plus times, plural, plus half a time equals the prophecy time period that we'll get to shortly. Now, if we plug in those equivalent time periods from the previous explanations, we get the mathematical equation of 360 days, which is a time, 720 days, which is times, plus 180 days for half a time. And that equals the prophecy time period. Putting this addition equation into a more easily understood column of numbers to be added, we get 360 days plus 720 days plus 180 days equals a total of 1,260 prophetic days, which in turn equals 1,260 earthly years when we apply the day for a year definition. It's interesting to note that there are some variations of the same time period elsewhere in the Bible. For instance, the time, times, and half a time term is equal to 42 months, which in turn equals 3.5 days in prophecy terms, which means, of course, 3.5 years, which is also 1,260 days. All these periods are mentioned in other prophecies about this same foretold period of time. Exactly where these alternative terms for that same period of time, the time, times, and half time, are in the Bible, where they are in the Bible, are found in this chart. For instance, time, times, and half a time is found in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, chapter 12, verse 7, and in the book of Revelation, chapter 12, verse 14. Note that the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation share many similarities. Now, the term 3 days and a half, which means 3 years and a half, remembering a day for a year, is found in Revelation chapter 11, verses 9 and 11. Now, the term 1,260 days is found in Revelation chapters 11, verse 3, and chapter 12, verse 6. And the term 42 months is found in Revelation chapter 11 verse 2 and chapter 13 verse 5. 42 months times 30 days in a month equals 1,260 days. All these prophetic time periods refer to the same period and the same year of fulfillment. That same period of time is equal to 1,260 years, by the way. Just be aware that 4 of my other videos, shown here, explain the sources of these time prophecies in the Bible. They can all be found on my YouTube channel on the bottom of the slide, which is named, as you see there, the symbol at Integral Destiny 9. That's at Integral Destiny 9, all one word, no spaces between the characters. The top 2 videos are from the full course on the Book of Revelation, a collection of 12 videos in all that make up the full study course on the Book of Revelation. Video number 7 covers chapter 11, and video number 8 covers chapters 12 through 14 that explains more about the beast 666 when it arrives to persecute the Messiah of the latter days and his forerunner in the 1800s, thus giving the timing of the return of the Messiah. The bottom two videos are from my series on several chapters of the book of Daniel in a collection of 8 videos in all. Part 3 on the left covers chapter 7 of Daniel, which is about the 4 beasts that arise from the sea. And part 7 of Daniel covers chapter 12, the last chapter of Daniel, which covers the end times and contains numerous references to time prophecies, which the video explains. Next, an explanation of why prophetic months are 30 days in length. Many people will not care about the reasons, but this is here for the few who do care about such details. How do we know a month in prophecy is 30 days in reality? Not like today's calendar with months of various lengths. Well, Dr. Hugh Mottla, in his book, I Shall Come Again, researched this question and found that in biblical times, when many of these time prophecies were written down in Egypt and Babylonia, calendars were 12 months of 30 days each. Then at the end of the year were added 5 days to celebrate the birthdays of divinities. Note, Dr. Mottla's book is out of print now, but you may be able to find some copies online from various booksellers. There are 2 principal proofs of the 30-day month in prophecy. First, from the Old Testament, from the book of Genesis, the story of Noah and the ark. It is made clear that this story pointedly uses a 30-day month. The specific verses that we'll discuss to define our time period terms are Genesis chapter 7 verse 24 and chapter 8 verse 3. Then Genesis chapter 7 verse 11 and chapter 8 verse 4 that will define another term for that same period of time. We will then compare these 2 terms to deduce the length of a month. So we'll look at these first 2 verses to get that first period of time terminology. The text of Genesis chapter 7 verse 24, quote, "And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days," end quote. So from the start of the rain until when the waters were abated and land dry enough to leave the ark, there were 150 days, per a direct quote from the Bible. Now, the rain was falling for the first 40 of those 150 days, but here the Bible is speaking of from when the rain started until the ark rested on land and Noah and his family could leave the ark because there was dry land to step upon after it hit the ground. There is a second verse in the 8th chapter of Genesis, verse 3, that also states that this period of time was 150 days in length. Quote, "And the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of the 150 days the waters were abated." End quote. So we'll insert that 150 days that the waters covered the earth into our table as shown here, and go on to that next grouping of verses for the second term that we will compare to this 150 days. Genesis chapter 7 verse 11 describes the start of the rain, quote, "In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened," end quote, which means it began to rain, the start of it all. Then in Genesis chapter 8, verse 4, it states, quote, "And the ark rested in the 7th month, on the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains of Ararat," end quote. Genesis chapter 7 verse 11 says the start of the rain was on the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month. Genesis 8 verse 4 gives the 7th month on the 17th day of that month as when the waters had abated enough for the ark now rested upon the mountains of Ararat. So the period of the 17th day of the 2nd month to the 17th day of the 7th month is then exactly 5 months. So we'll insert that 5-month period into the Genesis 7 verse 11 and chapter 8 verse 4 row in our table here. We know from these verses that the period of time from the start of the rain until the ark hit dry ground, the mountains of Ararat, was given as both 150 days and 5 months. Therefore, we can deduce that this period was 5 months of 30 days each, since if you divide 150 days by 5 months, you get 30 days per month. The second example that shows that the Bible uses a prophetic calendar that considers a prophetic month to be 30 days in length comes from the book of Revelation, from the New Testament. This quote from the Amplified Bible shows how Bible scholars have recognized this to such an extent that they've written these Bible time terms into their version of the Bible. This is a quote from Revelation chapter 11, verse 2 and 3, quote, "But leave out the court of the Gentiles, which is outside of the temple, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles," meaning the nations, "and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. And you note there in parentheses, 3½ years. So they are recognizing they are exactly the same terms, the same meaning, the same period of time. "And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days. And in parentheses, the Amplified Bible has 42 months and also 3½ years. Dressed in sackcloth, meaning that these time terms are the same period of time. And if we look at 42 months and 3½ years, that they are equivalent, and they both are 1260 days in length. Therefore, from both of these examples, one from the Old Testament and the other from the New, it is clear that the prophetic calendar uses a 30-day month. This last section of the video provides a few sources of information about the Bab, Bahá'u'lláh, and the Baha'i faith. Here are some websites where you can find out more about Bahá'u'lláh, his forerunner, and the Baha'i faith. These are the same websites I gave to you before, so I won't go through them again. There is a free online book that gives a good, interesting overview of the Baha'i faith, its main figures, history, beliefs, and its followers, without being preachy or trying to convert you. Its title is Bahá'u'lláh and the New Era by J.E. Esselmont. You can read it online or download a copy. Just go to the website through this website that's on the screen. Pause the video to write it down if you have to. If you prefer an actual physical book, it may be available through online book vendors too. It may even be in your local library for free. If you would like to meet Baha'is in your area, you can go to the website of the National Spiritual Assembly for your country. For those in the USA, that website is bahai.us, or call 800-22-UNITE, which is 800-228-6483, weekdays between the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Central Time. And there is an email address of Baha'i, BAHAI, info@baha'i.us. Tell them your name and contact information, and they will contact Baha'is in your area who will contact you. There are some online Baha'i bookstores. The USA Baha'i bookstore is at a website you see here, bahaibookstore.com. My YouTube channel name is shown here. First, you have the symbol for at Integral Destiny 9. All one word, no spaces in between the characters. At Integral Destiny 9. We in the USA just had yet another big media buildup to what some predicted would be the occurrence of the rapture, when Jesus would gather all his esteemed believers up, raise them up above the surface of the earth, and take them to heaven to be with him. Something like what is shown in the graphic on the left there. This was to occur around September 23 or 24 in this year, 2025. It did not occur, at least no reports of lots of people missing. Apparently there is a new date for it to occur. I'm sure it won't happen then either. There is another understanding of the verse that this is all based upon, and that's 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. I made a video to explain this alternative meaning. It is titled, "To Meet the Lord in the Air, the Real Meaning." I will put the title and the link, if I can, to get to that video in the description below the title of this video that you're watching on YouTube. Just click on the three dots with the word more, so ... more, as shown in this illustration. You can click on that and you will get to the description. And I'll have some information in the description of this video to help you get to this video. Then there is this expectation that many Christians have. He's supposed to come on a cloud for all to see. My video that addresses this concern and much, much more is titled, "Every Eye Will See Him," which is a quote from the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 7. Again, look in the description for this video to find the link or how to get to the video, "Every Eye Will See Him." What about all those signs in the heavens that will happen before or as the Christ returns or around when he returns? Like the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, among other such signs. The video titled "Signs of Apocalypse, Matthew 24 verses 29 through 31 fulfilled" should answer your questions about these signs in the heavens. With the recent media hype about the rapture supposedly coming, so many people thought they'd be plucked up off the earth by Jesus and go to heaven. However, a couple verses in the Bible speak of only 144,000 who would be saved with the coming of the Messiah, the returned Christ. You might be wondering what these 144,000 to be saved really means. The answer is in this video titled 144,000. What does it really mean? This is also answered in my study course on the book of Revelation. I'll tell you about those videos shortly. You may be wondering if Bahá'u'lláh is himself the dreaded Antichrist. This video, "Antichrist, Fact and Fantasy," will answer that question, and also, toward the end of the video, it will tell you who the Antichrists, plural, actually were when Bahá'u'lláh and his forerunner were teaching their revelations from God in the 1800s. You may be wondering about that mysterious book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. What the heck is that all about? Due to the complexity of this final book of the Bible, it took me 12 videos to fully explain it. Shown here is the title page of just the first video of this 12-part video series. Here is the list of these 12 videos in the Book of Revelation study course. The number of the video is in the left column with the yellow background. The chapter or chapters of Revelation covered in that video are in the center column, and the length of the video is in the far right column. I'm sure you noticed that some videos are more than 3 hours long. The shortest video is number 5 at 1 hour, 13 minutes. Think of these videos as an audio-visual book. You can watch a portion of the first video in one sitting, record where you left off, then the next session you start where you left off. It will take a while, but you really will understand the logic and symbolism in the book of Revelation after watching these videos. Please watch them in order for your own benefit. Video number 12 explains the chronological cycles of Revelation. You can watch this at any point, but I do think it best to wait until you have watched through video number 7 beforehand. Also, it may help you to have the book of Revelation open while you watch the videos to follow along. On the left is a screenshot of the description entry for video number 1, which is the introduction in chapter 1 of Revelation. This is a table of contents for that video. I do not recommend just searching for a certain verse and only watching that section of the video. Everything needs context. The introduction too provides a context for the study course as a whole. That is why I strongly recommend watching video number 1, then watch the rest of the videos in order. The table of contents is useful if you then have a need to review certain points. Note that this study course on Revelation also addresses many of the questions and concerns covered in some of the videos I have already reviewed just before this one, such as the 144,000 covered in a separate video. It is also covered in this series, but with fewer details. It may take you a month or more to get through them all. There is no rush, and it will be worth your time. Here are some of my other videos on my channel that explain aspects of the fulfillment of Bible prophecies of the Messiah's return. Top one there, the least of these, the real meaning of Matthew chapter 25. Then the prophecy of the 7th millennium. The book of Daniel, certain chapters of it. That's in over 8 videos, what are called parts 1 through 8. Armageddon is over, and a few others. The National Organization of the Baha'is of the United States has a presence on both Facebook and its own YouTube channel. Both of their pages in these websites goes by the name Baha'is of the United States. Some other YouTube channels you may find interesting include at John S. Hatcher, and I've highlighted the S so you wouldn't forget it. He is an author and has created many videos explaining aspects of the Baha'i faith and other religious topics. Next, at Clearwater Baha'is, all one word, no spaces. Third, at Baha'i Faith Modern Perspectives, all one word with no spaces. At the bottom, at BahaiTeachings.org. Their website, BahaiTeachings.org, was previously mentioned. This is their YouTube presence. All these YouTube channels have numerous informative videos on a variety of religious and spiritual topics from a Baha'i point of view. Note that all these channels were created and are managed by independent Baha'is or groups of Baha'is. None of these are official channels of the Baha'is of the USA. There are many other channels too. The official YouTube channel of the Baha'is of the United States, as I mentioned, is Baha'is of the United States. Thank you for watching. Please note that this production is not an official production of the Baha'i Faith community. It was written, produced, and narrated by me alone. Contact me at that email address if you have any questions. All copyright protections are claimed. Do not change any information, slide, diagram, or narration without my permission. And please do not charge a fee to anyone for viewing this video or any part of it. I do not make any money from these videos. I consider this a service and a gift to my fellow human beings.